This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a very special edition because I have my two partners on with us today, Daniel Hennes and Brendan Egan. And we've got with us today the founder and CEO of Influencer, Jim Cavale. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Jim.
Great to be here, guys. Excited to talk.
Hey, listen, my audience knows my two partners really well, Daniel and Brendan, and they know what they're doing over at Engage. But we're going to get into that a little later. But first, Jim, tell us a little bit about your backstory. You have a fascinating backstory, both as an athlete and as a businessman. Can you share a little bit about where you grew up, how you even got to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm a former student athlete. I played college baseball, and my journey and passion for baseball really led me into my career as an entrepreneur. So I'm from upstate New York, Syracuse. If you're familiar with upstate New York, and especially Syracuse or Buffalo, you know that we lead the nation every year in snowfall. Lake effect snow is our thing, and so I grew up in a snowy climate and a cloudy climate, and I could not wait when I graduated from high school to get down south and play college baseball, because I just, as a baseball player, always wanted to play in a warm climate. And so I took a scholarship opportunity to a Division II school in Alabama. And the University of Montevallo is where I attended and played ball, but also it's where I found my real passion as an entrepreneur. I built my first business while I was there, did that for about 5 years out of college up in Birmingham, which is about 30 miles from the university. And really fell in love with the South, but also fell in love with just the opportunity of taking the things you learn from sport, right? So the disciplines you learn with your body, the team collaboration and leadership aspects, and applying it to building something that's going to bring value to the market, right? And that's what business is. And so really had some fun with our first business. It was a recruiting network that connected high school athletes with college coaches. Did that for about 5 years, and exited that business to start building a fitness brand, brick and mortar, and did that for 7 years. Grew up from a garage to 47 locations across the country. We franchised it. It was a fun ride, and during that time, met my wife, built a family. I always joke, my wife is from Boston and Puerto Rican. I'm an Italian guy from New York. We met in Birmingham, Alabama. What are the odds? But we have 3 kids, and they get mom's Boston accent, dad's New York accent, and their teacher's Southern drawl every day. So you can only imagine how unique they talk and act. But we have a lot of fun down here, a great family. And my wife's also an entrepreneur. She has a beauty on demand app called Glow that helps women get hair, makeup, spray tans on demand at their house, home, hotel. So it's funny, as I built Influencer, which we're going to talk about in a second, it's been fun because it's been happening in conjunction with my wife building a business, and we're in the same building. Influencers on the 3rd floor, Glow is on the 2nd floor. And we have a lot of fun, not just raising our kids, but also doing businesses together. Influencer is something that really in the mid 2010s, I started to hear more and more about the Ed O'Bannon case. Being in Birmingham, this is the mecca for college sports. The SEC headquarters is in Birmingham. The SWAC headquarters is in Birmingham. The Gulf South Conference, which is a big Division II league, is in Birmingham. So you have a lot of conference headquarters here. And of course, a lot of schools are around here. And being friends with Greg Sankey, another upstate New Yorker that ended up in Birmingham as leader of the SEC, started hearing a lot about this whole O'Bannon case and NIL from him and other peers of his in the mid 2010s. And I found it interesting, right? Like there's this aspect of NIL is not a matter of if, but when. And this whole case of Ed O'Bannon realizing that his likeness had been used by a video game. And here he is 10 years after winning a national title at UCLA, selling used cars in Las Vegas the owner of the dealership says, come home for dinner tonight. He goes to the guy's house and he's playing a video game with the guy's son that he's in. And he's like, wait a second, And so that leads to him realizing that there's some value being lost by athletes in a case that the Supreme Court votes in favor of O'Bannon against the NCAA. To me, that was the writing on the wall that led to a lot of other dominoes that helped me realize it's time to, after 7 years, sell my share of Iron Tribe Fitness, the fitness brand I had been building, and start building something in the tech realm for student athletes to build their brands. Because while they can't do NIL today, this is 2016, they're going to be able to do it eventually. And today, they do need to start thinking of their social media as a channel that they need to manage and use to grow their brand for whatever opportunities are out there ahead of them. And so we launched Influencer in 2017, Kentucky men's basketball, Auburn football were our first two clients. And we grew fast, 2 years. We grew to past 100 Division I schools and 1,500 teams. Teamworks acquired us at that point. Since then, we've grown past 200 Division I schools and more than 4,000 teams. And we're in pro and abroad as well, English Premier League and other areas. So we help athletes build their brand. And more recently with NIL, we help them build and manage their NIL business. And it's been a lot of fun.
So Teamworks, wait a second, you threw in Teamworks. Teamworks is owned by you also. Is that not correct?
Teamworks owns them.
So Teamworks acquired Influencer in 2019, about 2 years after I founded Influencer. And, we did a really awesome transaction with them that really was tied to a Series C that Teamworks was raising, $27 million round to fund growth. And obviously one of the biggest verticals in college sports at that time and still is NIL.
Right.
And so instead of raising a Series A with venture capital, we chose to go the route of being a part of the Teamworks family and having the backing of this Series C and just the ecosystem. At that time, Teamworks already had all the major college institutions under multi-year contracts, and they already had most of the teams in pro and pro sports here in America and abroad under contract. So it was really a cross-selling growth opportunity for us as well.
Okay, but I mean, Jim, you already were a successful entrepreneur. Obviously, financially, you did well with your analog gyms and sold your interest in that. But taking the Ed O'Bannon case and then starting Influencer, and for our listeners and viewers out there, to check out Influencer, you could just go to, I have it up here on my screen, so give me 1 second here, www.influencer.com, influencer.com, inflcr.com. Jim, but it's almost like prophecy that you connected the dots with the O'Bannon case and that you thought that, NIL would be big, but you didn't know when, so you started managing the social media and online presence of these athletes before. So it was almost like you were 3 to 5 steps in the chessboard that nobody else was doing, that just now manifests itself on July 1st of last year. So how did you even connect the dots, and what informed you enough as an entrepreneur to connect those dots so far in advance where no one else really saw it and connected those dots like you did at Influencer?
It's from, a decade before that of just making mistakes and learning, right? Like, my first business, we had a really good subscription revenue business. And we changed the model to have more users and make money off of advertising. And it was an awful decision. You know what I mean? And we killed the value of the company with that decision in a lot of ways. My second business, Iron Tribe Fitness, we didn't really pick a vertical and a market to go after. We tried to kind of be everything to everyone. And we watched Orange Theory start at the same exact time. We laughed at Orange Theory. We thought, I'd never go run on treadmills in a group fitness environment. What are they doing? But Orange Theory knew we're going to help women who want to sweat a lot and feel like they're in a club again. And they attacked that market, and they went from 0 to 500 gyms. Well, we went from 0 to 50. And I learned you got to focus on one market. And so I had all these learnings from mistakes. Those are 2 of many. And one mistake I see entrepreneurs make a lot is they get so passionate about their idea that they don't go to the market with the idea even before it's fully baked and before they spend a bunch of money on it to see what the market says and learn what will the market write a check for. Because the market will talk to you with their checkbook. Kind of an old school reference for the younger audience. They'll talk to you with their Venmo. Anyway, so to me, it was taking that principle, take your concept, an idea, and let the market take it to where it needs to be. And then the second principle was, Instagram, and a lot of tech companies have taught us this: find one sticky, clean hook to get users. And then you can do all the other things later, And so pictures and videos, as I went out into the market to see what they would write a check for, talking to Calipari in Kentucky, talking to Gus Malzahn in Auburn, through connections I had from my first business, I could set those conversations up through those visits. I was realizing that kids, student athletes, were lining up at the locker room for the photographer and videographer to give them pictures and videos after the game. They wanted pictures and videos bad so they could share them with social. And so I realized if we just start there, if we just create an app that's easy, that organizes and personalizes all the pictures and videos for each athlete in real time after the game's over, they'll love it. They'll be in there every day, and the schools will pay for it. And sure enough, schools paid for it and kids used it. And then you build the NIL stuff that's coming. Then you build stuff even before NIL, like helping them understand how much their followers have grown and what that could be worth if they're a pro and an influencer and those kinds of things. And so, Instagram did that with pictures, right? We can just share pictures. Now you go to Instagram, you got Instagram Live, you got Instagram Stories, which was them just building Snapchat into Instagram. You got Instagram Reels, which is them building TikTok into Instagram. You got to get your audience first, then you can expound on your feature set. And so to me, this was a perfect way to start before NIL was real, because we get multi-year contracts with the schools that were going to have the problems NIL was going to create for us to solve later. And that's somewhat how it worked out. It wasn't that easy, but that's the principle.
Okay, so you had such a strong vision and a conviction of what you were doing. How did you get Teamworks to believe in that? And when you sat down at your table together, you and the leadership from Teamworks, what was your hypothetical vision as to when NIL would go live? Did it turn out to be faster than you thought or later than you thought?
Well, I first of all want to say that I love predicting the future and love taking risks. And, I think over time I've gotten better at seeing what's next, but I am not Nostradamus. I never saw NIL rolling out like it rolled out this past year. I don't think anybody did, but there were clues, right? So in 2019, the state of California passes the Fair Pay to Play Act, and it's going to start in 2023. At that point, the NCAA has a decision to make. If you talk to any of the leaders in this college sports world, especially commissioners, they'll tell you they could have sued the state of California, or they could have just sat and watched, which is what they did. By sitting and watching, the clue was this is going to happen. At that point, you got to look at other states, namely Florida, who don't want to be second or third. They want to be first. And now they're not first because California passed the bill. Right. Unless they pass their own bill and make it earlier, right? And so Florida, who we happen to have a lot of friends in Florida, and Darren Heitner's a friend, and he kind of tipped us off to, hey, this is going to happen in Florida faster, and it's going to move the date up, right? So at that point, now the NCAA's lost all control. And they're still, even at that time, in the middle of the Alston case, which makes them feel a liability of setting yet another, what is looked at as another limiting rule to student athletes with antitrust exposure to them. So they really weren't acting for a reason, even though a lot of commissioners and folks will say they could have sued the state of California, regardless of their stance and position with the Alston case. And so these clues showed that this was going to start in 2021. And then the solidifying factor was the NCAA passed its recommendations for NIL rules in April of 2020, month after the pandemic really started. And at that point, it's definitely going to happen. They're telling everybody they're going to set the rules. In January of 2021, we see they're not going to set the rules. They're going to wait out the Alston case. In June of 2021, they lose the Alston case like they lost the O'Bannon case. Now you know they're not going to set the rules at all. 10 states or so have their own rules, which hurts the 40 states and schools that don't. So the NCAA passes a waiver a week before July 1st saying everybody can do NIL. And instead of having one set of rules, we're going to have hundreds of sets of rules because every school can make their own policy. And that's where we are today, to the point where states are even trying to repeal their laws. Alabama is one of the dozen or so states that has an active law. They want to repeal it because they don't even want to limit the University of Alabama, Auburn, South Alabama with their policy. They want to let them have whatever policy they want. If you're a school in a state that has a policy, you kind of got to base it on the state law. So I never saw that last part. I saw a lot of the other things. I felt like the NCAA wasn't going to set these rules starting at the beginning of last year. I didn't need to wait to June to find that out. But every school having its own rules, I don't think anybody saw that. And the lack of involvement from the federal government is something not only that I think surprised some, but is probably going to continue, because I think they're just watching the chaos to see if we did step in, what do the rules need to be? And to do that, you got to see who's breaking the rules or doing things the wrong way so you can set the right laws.
Okay, and I'm going to get into now what NIL really is for our listeners and viewers that don't know, and I want to get into what you're doing with Engage. But before we did that, were you now better situated to take advantage of the NIL chaos that ensued and opportunity therefore that was created because of the vision that you had to and the guts that you had to partner with Teamwork a couple of years prior?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so Teamworks is a collaboration tool that has spawned into the operating system for the athlete altogether. I mean, if an athlete needs to know about flights, get a playbook digitally, if they need to report, attendance to a class, I mean, anything and everything that the team is going to message the athlete or communicate or collaborate with them on goes through Teamworks. And so it's used frequently on a daily basis by athletes and teams. And it's a company, like I said, started about 10 years before we did, and had a huge market share and operational infrastructure that could help us grow faster. So for me, it was getting to know the CEO, Zach Marides, early on, before I was really even going with influencer. I even had a client. I was introduced to Zach, and I realized that Zach loves entrepreneurship like I do, that he's cut from a similar cloth as me. He's a Greek from Chicago that ended up in North Carolina. I'm Italian from New York that ended up in Alabama. We had a lot in common. And two
ethnics that ended up down south. That's perfect.
Right. So we hit it off. And when I raised a seed round, he was there to kind of help with that and give me some advice. And when I was sending my investor updates and he saw the growth, and I was ready to raise a Series A, he came to our Storyteller Summit, which is our annual user conference for all the schools and their officials to come to. We had it over in Atlanta at Turner Studios. And he came there, saw the event, and pulled me aside after. He's like, I got an idea. And, what was an idea turned into a conversation with the board that turned into, an offer to acquire Influencer in a way that not only was a good cash deal for everybody involved, but also traded our stock for Teamworks stock. And Teamworks is a company that's slowly but surely becoming the titan of sports tech. I mean, Teamworks has since acquired other companies like Notemeal, which is the dietitian tool that athletes use to report their nutrition. And there's others that Teamworks will surely acquire over time to really become kind of like a Google Apps for the athlete.
So so you're filling out one role in their ecosystem, but they're an ecosystem play. And you saw
an ecosystem play, yes.
And your vision was you felt and you saw the chemistry that you and the CEO of Teamworks had, and you were culturally aligned as companies. So you saw that was a good fit.
Yeah, I think, with M&A deals, it's dangerous when a company's so young because it's a smaller team and everybody's tied to the founder. And, if the founder is not happy and if the deal's not right for the team, things could blow up, product's young, all these things. But I felt like, I've done things on my own. At the time I owned 100% of Influencer and I was the board, and now I'm going to Teamworks and I'm going to be the CEO of Influencer, but now I got a board, I got a reporting structure, I could be fired, and a lot of people knowing me were concerned for me that I couldn't handle that environment. But like the only challenge I saw in the deal was ego and pride. And I felt like it was going to work a really good muscle for me in my progression as an entrepreneur to have a venture capital board, to have a business partner in Zach that, owns a bigger piece than me. But yet also to have all of these operational sales and marketing and other advantages that were going to help us grow faster. And, it turned out to be a very, very big blessing because in the year of the pandemic, we didn't grow 400% like we did the year before. You know what I mean? We still grew almost 100%, but not 400%. But this 2021, we grew almost 3x again. And so, Teamworks has been the best decision I've made in building Influencer, and being a CEO that's been able to do a deal and stay has been a lot of fun for me to prove a lot of people who didn't think I could do it or didn't think Zach and I could do it wrong.
That's awesome.
So I've really enjoyed it.
So now, where are we with NIL, and how did you meet Daniel and the partners that he has at Engage? And Daniel's living almost through the flow of your career. Daniel's partnering with great entrepreneurs, just like you did with Zach. He's looking for great people to partner with as well, culturally and also in terms of vision. Where is NIL right now? What does NIL mean for our listeners and viewers out there that have no clue what that acronym stands for? And then why Engage and Influencer?
So first of all, NIL is, just for the layperson, every athlete has a name, image, and likeness that, they sign away when they play college sports. And the school can use their name, image, and likeness on the media guide. The media can use it in promos for the game. They can use the athlete's name, image, and likeness on the tickets. I mean, you name it, right? It used to be that they could use EA Sports could use them to a degree in video games, right? So that is not happening anymore. The waiver of the NCAA passed last June 2021, basically negated that bylaw and provided an avenue for student athletes to be able to monetize and manage their name, image, and likeness in a way that's never been possible before. So whether they want to do an endorsement for a company, whether they want to make an appearance for a company, sign autographs, sell apparel, you name it. There's things they couldn't do before that weren't even profiting them, but they want to do like raising money for a charity. There's so many different things they can now do. And so individuals and businesses can engage an athlete in a monetary deal. Now, the media wrote about this in a way that misled athletes and really the market, fans, et cetera, to think that NIL is this overnight payday, right? Like, because the media wrote about NIL like about Zion Williamson and Trevor Lawrence, who, of course, if NIL was possible when they were in college, would have made a lot of money. Right. But the reality is NIL is the same as getting a 4.0 GPA or, having a 550-pound deadlift that you can do 3 times, or getting playing time, or being the best player on your team, or scoring the most points. You get out what you put in. And everybody is not going to make 5 and 6 figures, let alone 7 figures a year with their NIL. Matter of fact, a lot of people say this is $1 billion market. Well, there's 500,000 student athletes. Each of them make $2,000. That's $1 billion. Right. So the per athlete value here is not meant to be tens of thousands of dollars, let alone hundreds or millions per athlete. But it's an opportunity. It's another way athletes can benefit. And unfortunately, athletes have been misled. So on July 1st, when NIL started, tens of thousands of athletes posted a viral post that was a screenshot of somebody's notes app, basically saying, the NCAA is allowing me to now profit off of my name, image, and likeness. And I want to let every brand out there know my DMs are open for business. As if July 2nd, they were going to get a bunch of offers. And by July 7th, they were going to be in the money. Sure. And that's just not what happened, right? There's 500,000 student athletes. 10 of them will make 7 figures. 100 of them will make 6 figures. 1,000 of them will make 5 figures. And, the rest, the 499,000 will make 4 figures per year. And that's okay. And I want to say that because I want to credit the power of the market and why this opportunity is so awesome. And that's because you're going to have billions of dollars flow to athletes, and athletes are learning a skill that goes beyond any money they make, which is think of yourself as more than an athlete and realize you're not going to play forever, and start to use the stage you're on today to set the stage for the rest of your life, just like I did playing D2 baseball.
Right.
That's the great part about NIL. But the part that's a little different is, I start for my team, and this other starter for this other school makes $10,000 a year, and I make nothing. I'm a failure at my NIL. And that's not true. It's just that person is taking initiative and building their own business, and you have to do the same, and you got to learn and have some skill to do that. And so I worry about the mental health side of all this a little bit, because I think there can be a lot of athletes that feel like failures, a lot of coaches that feel like failures because their athletes aren't making a ton of money, a lot of ADs that might feel like failures because their whole student body is making. We're talking about your top 10% could make some good money doing this, and that's okay. Everybody's not going to have a 4.0. Everybody's not going to start.
Right.
And I think we've got to, continue to look at the numbers to support that message, but that's what the numbers are telling us so far.
Daniel, when did you meet Jim in your journey as an entrepreneur? And then when did you realize that he's someone that you want to be partners with, just like he realized he wanted to be partners with Zach? Explain the entrepreneur to entrepreneur cultural alignment and visionary alignment that you saw.
Yeah, I've been following influencer for a while, just because obviously you got to know what's going on in the space. And I always thought they were very sleek, well-branded, providing a lot of value, and also just having friends playing college sports at Tennessee and Auburn and schools that are influencer schools. I was pretty familiar with them. We had a feature come out on us on ESPN like June 28th. And right after that, influencers PR person, Steve, I think his last name is Delshon, whatever.
Yeah.
He reached out and set a call with sort of the influencer team, with Nita and Josh and everyone. And right away, it was just clear that this was a company that was all about providing value for the athletes and helping the athletes. We are also a company that is about providing value for the athletes and helping the athletes. And I thought for us, I think everyone sort of saw the fit where they help with a lot of the compliance, brand building, storytelling, all of those things that are so important. And we have a really good platform that helps them monetize all the work they're putting in. So when they do everything right, we have a really good platform that helps them, as Jim said, raise money for charity. And I'm glad he brought that up, because people really underestimate how many athletes want to do that and how many of them are doing it quietly. So we have a platform that helps guys raise money for charity, or helps guys get endorsement deals or speaking deals. So it's just one of those things where I was like, look, it was an easy fit. The more athletes we have on our platform, the better. And for influencer, the more they can be doing to provide value for athletes, the better. So it was a very simple, easy fit. And it's nice to have a partnership not take a year to execute. It was very, very efficient. It was a good thing.
Well, and the thing is to me, one of the places that athletes need a ton of help with NIL is this kind of, bookings category and appearances category.
Yep.
And, there's so many problems we need to solve with NIL, right? The misconceptions I mentioned before, I won't repeat them, they're also met with this reality that the only place NIL has been done in sports before July 1st, 2021 was pro sports.
Yep.
Well, in pro sports, every pro athlete has an agent, right? Because that's part of being a pro athlete. You're gonna have somebody represent you.
Yeah, they're not.
And the money you're gonna bring in.
They're small businesses. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they also have a players association, and so these things that those two, agent and player association, help with is, how do you do a deal? What are you worth? When you do the deal, how do you fulfill it? Where do you go? When do you got to be there? When do you smile? What shirt do you wear? If you're doing an endorsement, what should be behind you? What should the lighting be? The athletes don't have any help with any of this, unless you're Bryce Young at Alabama with CAA representing you, and you got to make $1 million for CAA to want to work with you. So, that's a real issue. And I feel like people just kind of gloss over it. Another thing is, student athletes are students. So they don't have as much time. It's not just playing the sport. They got class to go to. And so what I love about Engage is it's like, let's streamline that for this category that's going to be a big opportunity for you, appearances. And, for our athletes to be exposed to that. And that's why we have a partnerships team that Daniel and company worked with to put this together. Nita Streetcamp and Josh DeLander and company, they're helping our athletes get exposed to the very best platforms that can save them time and also bring them opportunities and give them what they need to fulfill them properly so they can make money. And that's what Engage solves for us in that appearances.
And Jim said the most important thing before you move on, John, it's about helping athletes get what they're worth. What happened on July 1st a lot is companies are saying, oh, we'll pay student athletes, every student athlete, and they were giving them 30 or 40 bucks. Yeah. At the end of the day, like fundamentally what's happening there is like, I'm sorry, it's nice for the college kid to have that money, but the company's still taking advantage of the kid in that case. They're paying $30 for something that with a pro athlete would cost them thousands, because what those agents and players associations do is help protect value. So with our platform, like I take, Valus Jones and Hendon Hooker are two kids on Tennessee we work with a lot. One of my favorite things about their process with appearances from now to when it started is they now will use our platform to go back and negotiate, because they know, oh, wait, I have a market rate. I need to be getting a few grand. They understand their value and they've learned their worth. They learned what they can charge for these things, what these groups are willing to pay, and not to just accept every first offer. Like one of my favorite things now is like when one of our athletes will, like Valus is a great example. He'll send me a contract and say, hey, just wanted to, to put this to your platform for final review. He's like, I noticed these few things were off. Like, am I right? And to have athletes who've been through our platform and used it on their own and now understand what really goes into these deals, like that's the most rewarding thing for me, is they're getting what they're worth and they understand conceptually why that is the way it is. So they'll be better at picking their agents. They'll understand how to, protect their value long-term. Like getting what they're worth is the most important thing. And like, there's been way too much of companies trying to get PR wins by saying we'll pay every college athlete, when at the end of the day, they're just exploiting them. Like that's what's happening. What's happening
is, those are great points. I love the idea too of not just them getting what they're worth, Daniel, but in the process of that, learning how on their own to keep protecting getting what they're worth, even without you or me or anybody involved. That's huge. It's a life lesson they'll keep for the rest of their life. They'll be teaching young people that 10 years from now. But what Dave's talking about, and it's a sad part about NIL, is this democratization, commoditization aspect that, once again, do we want every athlete to win and, a bunch of athletes to make maybe a smaller amount, while other athletes are going to make more? That's the market. That's great. But to create gimmicky group campaigns that devalue a great deal of the athletes that are in the campaign, just so we can, say we help this many athletes, it's a commoditization that's happening that is distracting people and giving brands the wrong idea about what these student athletes' value truly is. Because I'll tell you this, these student athletes aren't necessarily true influencers, in that they don't post 5 times a day on social media. They don't all understand how to have a very good context on their social that the brands they promote could fit into. They could all be better at that, because they got their followers because of the position they have for a team, more than posting every day. But they have followers that are, whether they're peers or youth, very, very targeted to the sport,
very engaged
and what they're about, and very engaged. And these athletes get 25% engagement on a post. A brand gets 3% on a post. And so they bring a ton of value, especially to a company that's trying to reach people in the sport that the student athlete's playing. Huge opportunity. And so we got to find ways to show how student athletes are a really great deal for brands to invest into, and not a way to, get around working with pro athletes for cheap.
Yeah, no. And like it's funny, talking early on to some of the brands we work with, the brand marketers who we know are very blunt. They're like, NIL seems like the greatest value proposition ever, because we know exactly what we're getting, and we have to pay like half of normal influencer rates. And now they're forcing, we have a campaign coming up that I'm really excited about with this cool company, Emil Learning, where I'm not going to disclose terms, but they're spending a really, really significant amount of money, and they're paying these college athletes like they would pay influencers. And it's this ed tech startup that wants young athletes to do online learning so they understand the value, they're doing it right, they're paying the athletes right, and it's the entirety of their marketing plan. And instead of just going out and giving every athlete $30, they're picking 10 to 20 kids through our platform that really matter and are right to come in and shoot content and do this right. And like that, Jim, you're so right. Like the commoditization of it is concerning for me because like companies are taking advantage of it and doing the wrong way. And other companies are coming in and saying, oh, well, literally, we think we can get this kid for $50. And it's like, no, it's actually going to cost you $5,000. And like the kid knows his worth now. And we're trying as much as possible to educate kids and protect them on that so that they know what they are worth and avoid that stuff happening.
That's awesome.
That makes sense.
Awesome.
Brendan, you're Daniel's partner, and you never heard of the acronym NIL before Daniel started bringing it up to you, and then you never heard of influencer either. Neither had I. Why, with all the opportunities that come across the desk at Engage that Daniel brings to you as the senior partner on the team and the CMO of the company, were you so excited about influencer and the partnership and the NIL opportunity?
I think, John, as Jim shared with us, he was years ahead of the trend. So I think, Jim, you guys had a unique advantage in this space, from a platform standpoint, a technology standpoint, a marketing standpoint. I mean, you guys checked all the boxes. I think you were the front runner. So you guys, kind of had that first comer advantage, I think. And, what's interesting is Engage, when we got started, NIL was this idea that Daniel told us about, and we were like, yeah, is that really ever going to happen during our business lifetime? And luckily it kind of fell into our lap. We were just kind of taking advantage of the pro sports market and the speaking market, but it kind of fell into our lap as well. And I think it's something that's, probably, as you would agree, Jim, probably just getting started. So I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity, not just for our companies, but I think there's a lot of other interesting companies that are going to emerge as a result of it.
Yeah,
we're in the first quarter mile of a marathon.
Absolutely.
It's very early.
Absolutely.
I know we're up against some timelines here, and I want to be respectful to everybody's resources. But Jim, I recently read about you when I was doing some homework on your career, and someone asked you online what you love about your job, and you said making an impact. And here we are on the Impact Podcast. Share what making an impact means to you as an entrepreneur, and then give us a little vision on where we're going to be a year from now with NIL before we have to sign off for today.
Well, making an impact starts when you're a founder, and it might just be you and one or two other people, and you're all dealing with the client, the user, whoever you're serving, and you're just trying to figure out where they have problems, how can you solve those problems? And so that's fun, and that lasts for a certain phase until you start to scale. But then you realize that making an impact isn't just thinking in line with your clients, it's creating a great place for your team. You have to build a team, not just that's talented, but a team that you're pouring into, you're learning their stories, you're understanding why they're here, you're understanding what they want to accomplish, you're understanding everything about the people on your team so you can pour into them, you can impact them, you can transform them. And if you do that, whether they're an engineer, a product person, a marketer, sales, partnerships, they're going to pass that impact down to the client through their department, through their concentration. And so, that's one way, just through the operation, not just impacting the clients, but impacting, the people on your team. But then bigger than that, like I've just realized, I thought for a while that, I was being led into, getting more into nonprofits or having a ministry or something that I could, spend all my time on that could help people that were less fortunate. And there's been a nonprofit I've worked on for the last 10 years that helps fatherless children. And that's one of my passions, but I've also traveled abroad and, been a part of groups bringing clean water to third world countries. Like seeing all this stuff, I started thinking, that's what I need to do. That's what God wants me to do, And then I realized about 10 years ago, you can use a for-profit business to fund and impact so many causes out there. And so thinking about your business from a philanthropic standpoint, where, instead of thinking all about being profitable, instead of thinking all about everybody growing individually, which are super important, shareholder value, people growing salaries and opportunity with themselves for their own purposes. But the business can do a lot to support other initiatives. And so that's what impact also means to me, is using business as a launching point to help causes that you're passionate about, people that are less fortunate. I'm a big believer. I promise this is not a political statement, but I don't think the government can solve our problems.
I agree.
I think only we can.
Agreed.
It's true.
And so we're blessed for a reason, and we're not blessed to want more and go get more.
Right.
We're blessed to bless others. And so I actually don't think it's the government's job to solve this problem. It's my job and our job. And so let's go figure it out. And so that's kind of how I look at life, whether it's through my family in that lens or through business. And I think that, we have an opportunity with all the wealth we have here in America to continue to fix problems when we're successful with business.
Yeah, you're a baseball guy. So Jim, let's leave it at this. Where you and where Influencer is right now, Teamworks is, and NIL. What are we at the top of the second inning, bottom of the first, top of the fourth? Where are we at?
Yeah, I think that I think we're in the second inning, but I think that the bases are loaded, and I think there's about to be I think the visiting team is going to bat around, and I think that the umpires might have to figure out if there's a 10-run rule.
Yeah.
Because and where I'm going is you asked me to predict the future. There's a lot of frustration right now about just the lack of regulatory uniformity, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I think that it's going to become more and more lax until there's any regulatory uniformity. And I think the way that the system will be played by people who want to essentially use NIL as an excuse to legalize pay-per-play is, going to become more and more of an eyebrow raiser. People are going to say, well, is that legitimately NIL? What did the athlete do for that birthday party appearance at the donor's house where they got paid $50,000? That's all just the reality of where this is going. But I actually think that while it will eventually lead to regulatory uniformity, I think that, like a lot of administrators said, this is also going to lead to media revenue sharing and actual employment status options for student athletes. I say options because I think that with those new provisions that athletes will be able to take advantage of in the near future, 3 to 5 years, I think that new expenses and liabilities will be added to the athlete experience, tuition. Hey, we have one strength coach here, but we got 4 because we wanted to use that in recruiting. You guys are going to share the expenses of the additional 3. Hey, we give you 1 pair of sneakers at the beginning of basketball season, and you want to have a pair of sneakers every game. You're going to now pay for every pair of sneakers over 1 pair. That's how this thing is going to kind of flow. It's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of student athletes past maybe the top, 30 schools in sports like men's and women's basketball and football are going to realize that they actually have a good deal right now with NIL, tuition being paid for, and a cost of attendance stipend. And I think that, your 31st school and on are going to probably want what they have today. Whereas, the top 30 schools are going to look a lot different. Sports may be canceled at some schools that schools have 30 sports. If you're sharing media revenue with football players, it's going to be tough to pay for women's field hockey, And so all of these issues are going to be opened up by NIL and the reality of NIL and going to be talked about and argued about and debated. All these things are being talked about internally at athletic departments across the country right now. They're all being modeled financially right now because it's going to become the hot topic of the future of college sports.
Well, Jim, I think there's such a huge landscape in front of you that you're going to just, like you said, crush it, run the bases. And I know Engage is going to be part of that with you. And I know Daniel and Brendan are so excited. For our listeners and viewers out there that want to learn more about Jim Cavale and all the great work him and his colleagues are doing, you can go to www.inflcr.com, influencer.com to find Brendan and Daniel. At Engage, you can go to www.letsengage.com. Jim, I'd love to have you back on Impact. You're definitely making a huge impact. You've convinced me that you've got this down. You had the right vision from the beginning, and you're just executing against it now with Zach and the great people at Teamswork. Daniel, you the same. We'd love to have you back together a year from now and see what's happening in the third inning of this NIL game. Thank you all for joining us today. We can't wait to see you on our next episode. Again, thank you so much, Jim, for making the world a better and more impactful place in all the great work you're doing as an entrepreneur.
Thanks, John and Daniel and Brendan. Like super excited about our partnership, and appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, John.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com.